The security footage is grainy, but the moment is unmistakable. A young white police officer stands in the middle of a grocery store aisle, his hands trembling as he points a gun at an elderly black woman. Her hands are raised. Her expression is calm but firm. She's not yelling. She's not crying. She's just standing there, beside a bag of flour in aisle 9. That woman is Colonel Diana Brooks, retired, decorated, and battle-tested. 32 years in the U.S. Army. A Bronze Star. A lifetime of service. And in that moment, she was seen not as a hero, but as a threat. It happened on a quiet Sunday morning in Atlanta. The kind of morning when the air feels soft, and the sunlight drapes everything in gold. Diana wasn't doing anything extraordinary, just shopping for ingredients to bake her granddaughter's favorite lemon pound cake. She moved through the store with quiet confidence, a presence that spoke of a life lived with discipline and purpose. She'd fought for her country, led troops into danger, and carried more responsibility than most could imagine. And now, she was standing in the baking aisle, choosing between all-purpose and self-rising flour. Unbeknownst to her, a customer had called the police earlier, reporting a suspicious person in the store. No real description. Just vague language wrapped in unease. It wasn't long before Officer Jake Lyman, a rookie barely a month out of the academy, arrived on the scene. He entered with his heart racing, hand hovering near his weapon, adrenaline clouding his judgment. He saw a black woman alone in an aisle, and with no confirmation, no questions, he pulled his gun. "Put your hands where I can see them," he shouted, startling everyone in the store. Diana turned, slowly, methodically. Her military training kicking in, not to resist, but to de-escalate. "Officer," she said, calmly, "I'm unarmed. I'm a retired Army colonel. My ID is in my purse." Her voice was steady. Measured. A lifetime of war zones had taught her how to stay composed under fire. But Officer Lyman, flooded with nerves and assumptions, wasn't listening. "Hands up. Now," he barked, his voice cracking. Mothers pulled their children closer. Some customers froze. Others began recording. The entire store watched as a veteran with 3 decades of service stood with her hands in the air, while a young man who'd never left the country held her at gunpoint. "Son," Diana said gently, never lowering her hands, "you're pointing that weapon at someone who's taken more bullets than you've ever fired." Her words cut through the silence like a scalpel. Just then, the store manager came sprinting down the aisle. "Officer, she's not the one. She's a regular. She didn't do anything." Slowly, painfully, Lyman lowered his weapon. The footage spread online like wildfire. By the next morning, her name was everywhere. Decorated veteran held at gunpoint, Colonel Brooks racially profiled, grocery store incident sparks outrage. The headlines were fierce. The reactions even fiercer. Hashtags like #Justice in Aisle 9 and #Colonel Brooks began trending. Veterans from every branch posted in support. Some wept as they watched the video, saying they never imagined one of their own would be treated this way, especially not on American soil. Diana didn't speak publicly at first. She let the country process what had happened. She let the department bumble through its PR statements and internal reviews. But 3 days later, at a packed community town hall, she stepped up to the podium. The room went still. People didn't just listen, they leaned in. Her voice was firm, resolute. "I served this country for 32 years, she began. I led soldiers through enemy territory. I carried brothers and sisters home in flag-covered coffins. But nothing prepared me for the moment I stood in a grocery aisle, hands raised, facing a weapon drawn by someone who was supposed to protect me. I don't want revenge. I want responsibility. That officer needs training. He needs education. Not punishment, growth. Because if we keep arming fear with authority, we will keep burying justice." Her words rippled across the nation. News anchors choked up reading them aloud. Civil rights leaders called her speech the new blueprint for grace under fire. But Diana wasn't interested in fame. She wanted action. Within a month, she launched Project Guardian, a national initiative demanding mandatory racial bias training for police departments, better veteran identification protocols, and community-led accountability boards. It wasn't just policy, it was a mission. One forged from her own humiliation, repurposed into hope. Officer Jake Lyman requested to meet her. She agreed. They sat face to face at a small coffee shop just outside city limits. He didn't come in uniform. He didn't speak at first. When he finally did, it wasn't rehearsed, it was raw. "I saw a threat," he admitted. "And I was wrong. I can't undo it. But I want to understand. I want to be better." Diana listened. Then nodded. "Understanding is where justice begins," she said. "Fear doesn't make you weak, but refusing to confront it does." Months passed. Diana continued her work, speaking at universities, testifying before Congress, and organizing forums between veterans and law enforcement. And that grocery store? They installed a plaque above aisle 9. It reads, "In honor of Colonel Diana Brooks, for her service, her courage, and her grace under fire." Every Veterans Day, the store now holds a ceremony. Not just to honor Diana, but to remind people that bravery doesn't always wear a uniform, and injustice doesn't always announce itself with sirens. Sometimes, it's quiet. Sometimes, it's wearing a badge. And sometimes, it takes a woman with nothing but dignity and poise to expose it for what it is. Diana never asked to be a symbol. But the world made her one. And in doing so, it gave us a chance, not just to reflect, but to grow. Because the next time we pass a stranger in the aisle, we might just ask ourselves, what story am I telling in my head? And is it time to rewrite it? In the months that followed, Project Guardian began gaining serious momentum. Police departments across the country, initially skeptical, started enrolling their officers in the program. It wasn't just a seminar. It was immersive. Veterans came in to share their stories. Families spoke of moments when trust was broken and how long it takes to heal. Officers, many for the first time, were encouraged to sit in silence and listen. Not defend. Not explain. Just listen. Diana made sure the program didn't just focus on race, it focused on humanity. It asked every officer one fundamental question. Do you see people, or do you see profiles? And then came the second question, more difficult, more honest. When you're afraid, who do you picture? It wasn't about shame. It was about growth. About disarming unconscious bias before it became a weapon. Some officers pushed back. Some walked out. But many stayed. And those who did, they left changed. Meanwhile, Officer Jake Lyman didn't just fade into the background. He became one of Project Guardian's most committed voices. He spoke to other rookies, candidly, about his mistake. He didn't glamorize it. He owned it. I was trained to react, he'd say, but no one trained me to think beyond fear. His story, paired with Diana's, became a staple of the training material. Two people on opposite ends of experience, meeting in the middle of a terrible moment, and deciding it wouldn't be the end of their story. Diana, though, remained grounded. Her daily life didn't change much. She still made her granddaughters pound cake on Sundays. Still tended the garden her late husband had planted years ago. Still wore her army pin on her coat collar, like a quiet badge of honor. But she also kept a folder on her desk, a growing file of letters, emails, and messages from strangers across the country. Black mothers who said they finally felt seen. White officers who admitted her story made them rethink everything. Students who said her grace gave them courage. Survivors. Fighters. People who'd been silenced, now finding their voice. She read every one. And still, she never called herself a hero. One letter, in particular, stayed pinned to her corkboard. It came from a young girl in Milwaukee. Just 11 years old. The handwriting was shaky. The message simple. Dear Colonel Brooks, I saw you on TV. You were brave. I want to be brave too. When I grow up, I want to be like you. Thank you for showing me what strong looks like. That letter. Diana kept it framed. And every time she felt tired, every time she questioned if real change was even possible, she'd read it again. Slowly. Carefully. Like a prayer. Because for all the headlines and news specials and viral hashtags, what mattered most to Diana wasn't the attention. It was the seed. The possibility that, somewhere out there, a scared young officer might pause before pulling a trigger. Or a curious young girl might grow up believing she's already enough. That respect is not earned through silence, but through presence. That dignity doesn't shout, it stands still, in aisle 9, unshaken, even when a weapon is pointed your way. 1 year after the incident, the city of Atlanta hosted a commemorative event in Diana's honor. They renamed the street outside that grocery store to Colonel Brooks Way. Crowds gathered. News crews returned. But this time, it wasn't about scandal. It was about legacy. Diana stood at the podium once more, same calm voice, same quiet fire. I didn't expect any of this, she said. But if my pain can prevent someone else's, then it was worth it. We don't rise by ignoring injustice. We rise by meeting it head-on, with courage, compassion, and clarity. We rise, together. As the crowd erupted in applause, Diana stepped down, her granddaughter racing up to hug her tight. And somewhere, quietly, that young officer, Jake, stood in the back, clapping too. Not for show. But for growth. For second chances. For the woman who changed his life with nothing but her truth. Because sometimes justice doesn't roar, it whispers. It shows up in the softest, strongest ways. In the steadiness of a veteran's voice. In the humility of an apology. In the eyes of a child who now believes the world might just be worth fighting for. Epilogue. 2 years later, the ripples from that single moment in aisle 9 were still spreading. Project Guardian had expanded to over 30 states. It was now part of cadet training in several major cities, and even some rural towns had adopted it. Quietly, humbly, without press releases. It was no longer just a program. It had become a culture shift. A new standard. One that didn't treat bias as an afterthought, but as something to confront head-on, with accountability, transparency, and empathy. Diana Brooks never stopped showing up. She didn't retreat into retirement or let the spotlight harden her heart. Instead, she leaned in, traveling to community centers, veteran hospitals, high schools. She gave speeches, but more often, she listened. She counseled young women on how to hold their ground. She met with officers who wanted to do better. She brought her granddaughter with her to as many events as possible, teaching her not just through words, but through witness. You don't need a gun to be powerful, she'd tell her. You just need your voice and the will to stand firm in the truth. And the truth was this: Diana had become a living bridge. Between generations. Between communities. Between fear and forgiveness. A woman once mistaken as a threat was now a symbol, of strength, of grace, of the America we could be if we had the courage to look in the mirror. Back at that grocery store, aisle 9 remained unchanged. But just above it, a small plaque had been mounted. Simple. Unassuming. It read. On this spot, dignity stood tall in the face of fear. May we all remember to see each other fully. The store manager had requested it. Quietly. Privately. He'd been working that day. Had seen the footage. Had done nothing. And it had haunted him. The plaque wasn't for customers, it was for his team. A daily reminder. As for Officer Jake Lyman, he rose in the ranks, not because of blind ambition, but because of earned respect. His fellow officers now turned to him when tough conversations needed to be had. He taught them how to hold space for discomfort. How to lead with curiosity, not assumption. How to pause. He even started a mentorship group for officers fresh out of the academy. They called it the Pause Project. And at every session, he began the same way. The day I met Colonel Brooks, I thought I knew what danger looked like. What I didn't know, was what integrity looked like. I saw it that day. I've been chasing it ever since. Diana never sought recognition. But the White House called. Twice. Once to offer her a national award, which she accepted on behalf of all who'd been mistreated and unheard. And once to ask her to serve on a federal advisory board for police reform. She agreed, but only if they let her speak plainly. No politics. No sound bites. Just truth. And they did. But perhaps the most powerful moment came not on a stage, but one quiet morning in her kitchen. Her granddaughter, now 12, sat across from her, working on a school report. "Grandma," she asked, looking up from her laptop, "what do I say when they ask me what you did?" Diana smiled, pouring 2 cups of tea. "Tell them," she said softly, "I stood still. And the world moved."